The Sixers season is off to the races, and Daryl Morey has been incredibly calculated about keeping all roster options open in case that missing piece becomes available. Well, there have been some whispers about a potential reunion between the Sixers and PJ Tucker, and I want to break down why that is the worst idea in the world for this Sixers team here. So I'm going to start off with the reports that we do have. This originally coming from Kelly Iko here, who tweeted out that a number of contenders, including the 76ers, Heat, Bucks, and Suns, have held trade conversations with PJ Tucker's representation, sources told myself and Law Murray. The 14-year NBA veteran remains away from the team, hopeful for a solution. And to add to that a little bit, that we did get this update saying that from Chris Haynes saying sources, Los Angeles Clippers granted permission for PJ Tucker's agent Andre Buck to speak to the other teams and facilitate working on a trade. Both sides continue working together while the veteran remains away from the team, waiting for an opportunity to contribute to a winning team. And a little more detail here that we do have, this being from Law Murray again, who says the Clippers have made it very clear that they do not want to simply waive PJ Tucker or stretch his deal or buy out his contract. If a team wants him, they can have him. The question is going to revolve around when. Suns, Heat have an open roster spot. And I will add that the Sixers do also have an open roster spot as well. That has been one of the clear tactics of Daryl Morey, not only to save a little money by not having that additional contract, but this does keep the door open for potential two-player or one-player for two-player trade or two players for three-player trade, things like that. One of the biggest appeals of the Paul George deal this offseason is that you did keep these draft picks in store. You still have some pieces that can be traded. You did not have to make that all-in deal because you were able to sign the guy in free agency. Now, with all that being said, PJ Tucker is not the guy that you should be spending these assets on. That we saw how this went his first go round in Philadelphia. For the record, I like PJ Tucker. I do wish it worked out better here. And there was a time and a place where PJ Tucker could have been a very effective player on a championship winning team, and was for the Milwaukee Bucks. But that is not the year 2024 or this upcoming season. That I do think his best days are behind him. The dude is 39 years old. And by the way, comes with a pretty healthy contract. And how do we know that? Is because Daryl Morey was the one that gave it to him. That this season, still making $11.5 million. That is a lot of money for a guy who's going to put zeros in the point scoring total in a lot of games that he's on the floor. Again, I like PJ Tucker, and I can speak to that this is a guy who loves Philadelphia. That he's got a couple of business ventures in the city. He hangs around the city pretty constantly. I saw him at the Rumpf Classic this summer, taking in some hoops there, played in the Rumpf Classic there. It was kind of cool to see him up close and playing his style of basketball in that setting was really interesting because he was exactly PJ Tucker. He was just defending like crazy, not really shooting, not really interested in playing much offense, set some screens, made some passes, and it was pretty funny in kind of like a pickup hoop setting, seeing that, taking that in personally. Again, I don't want this to be an anti-PJ Tucker video, but what I will make it is an anti-PJ Tucker to the Sixers video, because we did see how that went, and to pull up the exact stats of his go around in Philadelphia in the 2 seasons that he spent here, which was just over 1 before that trade happening, being a part of that Harden deal here, averaged 3.3 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2.7 assists there. Did shoot 39.3% from three. Certainly did not feel like it with his 1.9 attempts per game. And that was my biggest frustration for why it did not work, is that he did not command the respect of opposing defenses, while Tucker is known for his corner three-pointers throughout his career, and that's been an area where he stood out. He looked gun-shy at times with the Sixers team, and I don't think having as much time away from basketball as he currently has is something that is going to fix that. Now, if Tucker, his dying wish is to come to Philadelphia and it costs them nothing, I don't care if it's that last roster spot. But I think, like, when looking at a player that fills what we hoped PJ Tucker could be, in a lot of ways, I think that could be Gershon Yabusele. That is a guy who has a similar level of physicality, toughness. He's way bigger than PJ Tucker, like probably 4, 5, 6 inches bigger than Tucker. I believe Tucker's listed at 6'5", and I think that's a pretty generous listing from standing next to him for a little bit, that I don't think he might be quite cracking that. And while, again, he's one of those ultimate, not the size of the dog, but the size of the heart, like the way that he competes type of guy. But I do think that there is, an expiration date on that, and I think PJ Tucker might have hit his. So there's a lot going on in Los Angeles as far as moving parts right now, but what the Sixers should not be looking at is to bail them out of this. I know there has been some good relationships at times, obviously the Harden deal going down. There's also been some bad relationships at times with Paul George coming to Philadelphia. It does feel like there's this little parallel universe between the Clippers and the Sixers, but I do think that this is not something to further explore. And luckily we did have this update from Mark Stein here, and shout out to Philly Sixers Galaxy for tweeting this out. He said that the Sixers' likelihood of acquiring PJ Tucker has been described as quite slim, despite recent trade speculation, per the Steinline. Quote, Miami, Milwaukee, Phoenix, and Philadelphia are all teams that have employed PJ Tucker previously and have all been mentioned as teams potentially interested in Tucker if the 39-year-old can exercise himself from the Clippers. The likelihood of any of those teams trading for Tucker, however, is quite slim. So what Stein seems to be indicating here, which I think is a fair, assessment of the situation, so I think all these teams feel a little similar, that the best days of PJ Tucker are absolutely in his rear view. If he is able to become a buyout candidate, I don't have an issue with bringing him in. I think giving up any sort of asset to bring in a guy that should not crack your playoff rotation is an absolute mistake and not something that I can see Daryl Morey doing. Now, I do think Morey's very active in the buyout market, and I do think Tucker could be a candidate. While I get that they're playing this strong game of that they have no desire for waiving or buying out the contract, it's one thing to say that. It's another when you get to kind of the end of the season. I get that they've let Tucker linger around and stay away from the team to this point, so it doesn't seem like this is a distraction in the way that it is in other situations. But I think for the Sixers team, just stay out of the mix. There's better options that can be done. And I also like the concept of evaluating what you have. I understand we're not going to get the full picture until Joel Embiid and Paul George are able to play for this team. We still have not seen that to this point, but you still are seeing kind of what this roster has, what Caleb Martin brings to this team, how ready Yabusele is to log major minutes, and what role he's right for. We're getting a kind of a look at all of these role pieces, or the players that are supposed to fit around the superstars without these superstars actually being present here. We know who PJ Tucker is as well and what he can bring to the team. Now, if there was a positive takeaway for him potentially being there, I do think KJ Martin's a guy that I think should shift into that PJ Tucker-like role. I think he's making progress in that area, and what I'm particularly talking about is off the short roll, his decision-making. We're seeing kind of some signs of some chemistry between Martin and Tyrese Maxey specifically, where Martin is the guy setting the screen, rolling, and then he's able to be a little bit of a playmaker, a decision maker out of that short roll. That's an area that I've been really impressed with his game. That's something that Tucker shined it for years, in addition to the corner three-point shooting there. So that is a guy that I think would benefit from learning from, or Martin would benefit from learning from PJ Tucker, but you should not be making decisions for the Sixers franchise based on what is best for KJ Martin, with all due respect there. So ultimately, this is a hard pass for me. I do hope that we never see another day with PJ Tucker back in a Sixers uniform. All due respect to him. Do hope he lands on his feet and does have a chance to compete for a contender this year, because that's obviously what he desires, but I don't think the Sixers are the solution for that. So would love to hear the people that do disagree with me in the comments. I understand there is still quite a few PJ Tucker fans out there. I have read some of the discourse and seen that, a little bit to my surprise, but those are my thoughts on why things should not ultimately be the decision, that the Sixers should stay far away from this being the situation. So once again, would love to hear from anybody in the comments your thoughts on that. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and liking this video if you have not already. We're just heading into the craziness of trade season. Hopefully we'll see Joel Embiid and Paul George on the floor for this team soon. Things get a little bit more exciting on the floor, but I will be with you guys from start to finish this season right here on Sixers Digest. So make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you haven't already. Dropping a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.